I think a big winner today was the Ravens. Because the day and age when Lamar and his mother think they're getting Deshaun Watson's contract, it ain't happening. No one is giving out that contract ever again. Just because someone made a terrible deal does not mean other teams are going to do that. Now, there are reports about contract offers going to Lamar for large amounts of money. I just think, like, Lamar, this is kind of the rate, man. It's a ton of money. You change your life forever. It's one thing if you're, getting below market value offers and numbers that aren't remotely close to what they should be. Like, if the Ravens are putting out numbers like this Hurts and what Burrow's going to get, like, sign the contract, man. What are you doing? You're getting terrible advice. It's not smart. This isn't good business. Take the emotion out of it. Coward said it for years. It's wise words. In business, you have to remove the emotion. You have to, because the only way you can think clearly. And let's face it, business is emotional. Why? Because it takes a lot of our time, put a lot of effort in, depending on what you do for a living. I mean, you allocate more time for business. Sometimes you do your family, right? But when you get too emotional about it, it's hard to think clearly, and you can make poor decisions. If the Ravens are in this ballpark, like, sign the contract, bro. This is NBA money. This is Scott Boras level contracts. This is more than fair. Like, you're properly compensated. And hopefully this Lamar situation can play itself out, but he made some demands that he wanted OBJ and DeAndre Hopkins on his team. And the reports were like, the Ravens, we can't sign both. We don't have unlimited money. We're paying OBJ $15 million. Hopkins makes 19.5 right now. How much money do you think we got, Lamar? This is a salary cap league. We're not the fucking Yankees. So Lamar's mom, I wouldn't put her in the Drew Rosenhaus camp, but they got to get that figured out sooner than later, because passing up way too much money. It's just not smart. I wouldn't say this guy's a loser, but I do think it's fair to say Justin Herbert, like, what Jalen got, Jalen's now been to a Super Bowl and got to the Super Bowl and dominated. And Burrow, whatever he gets more than Jalen, like back-to-back conference championship games and been to a Super Bowl and dominated. I'm a big believer in Herbert. I think he's awesome. But he's probably not worth, based on his resume, as much as that, just because of the postseason. Now, again, all relative. If we're talking 170 guaranteed, like, I think it's fair if the Chargers offered him 155 guaranteed, 160. His number is still going to be massive. That year per average, which to me is always kind of stupid, because that's not really how you get paid. You get paid in signing bonuses and the cash flow of a contract. This is not the NBA or baseball where you get a 4 or 5 year contract and every year is like 38, 42, 43, and it's all that money on that given year. It's not the way it works because of the escrow accounts. It's clearly a little more complicated in the NFL, but you get the large sum of money over the period of time. And I think Justin Herbert is going to get an astronomical amount of money. Now, the only question is, we know Dean Spanos, especially us on the West Coast, loves that savings account. It'll be very, very difficult for him to cut an enormous signing bonus and put the extra in escrow. That's not, it's just, he cringes at that. Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman, let's cut that check, baby. Let's cut that check. Let's pay our people. Because that's what they've been doing for a long time. They pay premiums for premiums. Chargers, it's like, they start arguing and it'll get kind of ugly. It's like, just pay Justin Herbert, man. Just pay Justin Herbert. Look at the Ravens. I'm giving the Ravens some credit. Like, they're trying. Lamar thinks he's getting, $250 million. Like, it ain't coming. But fascinating times in the NFL. Enormous amounts of money flowing. Never been a better time to be a really good player in the league. Obviously, quarterbacks are just getting, enormous direct deposits now and signing bonuses. But look at the other positions. Look how much money tackles are getting, pass rushers are getting, wide receivers are getting. Star running backs even get paid. I mean, this is a glorious, glorious time. This is the golden age of cash flow for the league. We talk a lot about owners making so much money, and it's true. The players have never made more, and they're in a direct rev share in this sport, right? I mean, they get, I don't have it in front of me. It's like 50-50 or 49-51 or whatever it is. And the money is flowing right to them. flowing to coaches. It's flowing to a lot of people. And obviously, if you're a really good quarterback, a lot of money flows toward you. A couple other things fire through. Bryce Young has officially canceled all his visits. All signs point the betting markets to him being the number 1 overall pick in the draft. Listen, you just watch him play for 2 years. It's not really debatable. One thing that's going to be impossible to argue, because we won't know until he has to play, is just his size. He's very small. Now, will that translate to him getting hurt? Only time will tell. But his play, he's going to be able to play. He played behind. It's like, well, how's he going to see? Well, he played at Alabama. Who do you think is playing guard and tackle for them? Little tiny people? Of course not. I mean, they got NFL guys playing at offensive line. So it's just going to be, can he stay healthy? That to me is my only question. Every box he checks: production, instincts, arm, mind, work ethic, character, resume. I mean, he's done it all. It's just, hell, he even played at Alabama with players that aren't as good as some previous eras. It's not like he was throwing to Jerry Jeudy and some of the stars they've had. Ruggs, who obviously is in a bad situation. I'm trying to think, who's the group? It was Ruggs, Devontae Smith, and Waddle. I mean, he's not playing with those guys at all. Another story today, and I asked some people around this weekend about Nick Caserio, because there were some rumors that he's out, right? He's going to get fired. And a bunch of people that kind of in the know said, I have not heard that. Not that that's not a rumor. They've seen the rumor, but they don't know if there's validity to that. Well, today Caserio did his pre-draft presser. Smart. The NFL makes every GM or head coach, participate. It just gets the news cycle going. Keeps slow times. Not as much going on, especially this week in the league. But Caserio basically had like Leonardo DiCaprio, as Florio wrote, like, I'm not leaving. He basically said it's embarrassing that he even had to address it. Spent multiple years building this thing up, and now they're kind of ready to move forward. And to me, there are 2 questions surrounding the Texans. We hit this up, I think, our last podcast or last week. Would they take a quarterback? And if it's not Bryce Young, it doesn't look like they're going to take a quarterback. And would Caserio not be the GM? Because we had people asking last week, like, would Adam Peters go with D'Amico? Nick Caserio did not sound like a guy who's not going to be there. Which, if I'm him, I would want to be there because I think D'Amico's going to be really good. Reason he hired him, right? And now they got all this draft ammo. So these next couple years will kind of define Caserio's career, because let's face it, right now it hasn't gone really well. It's been pretty ugly. It's been pretty embarrassing with those coaches. Now, there have been other variables, right? No one would take the job, especially 2 years ago, but assuming he's telling the truth, maybe that's what he thinks. We'll see. I mean, it's going to be pretty fascinating because the week after the draft is usually when there's some curveballs. I've been saying I'll be shocked if Sean Payton with the Denver Broncos it's status quo there. Like, the GM just going to stay? I don't know. I have a hard time seeing that one. A couple other things. The Chiefs, I love this. This just shows you they're such a high-level operation right now. A lot of teams these last couple of weeks have shown up for these voluntary workouts. And in this original phase, it's really just some film and some lifting. You're not like on the field with coaches or anything. So it's not, most of these guys, especially veteran quarterbacks, at home working out. Like, this is not that crazy, or just players in general. This is not the 70s and 80s when it's like, I drank beer all summer long and I just showed up to get in shape. Like, those days are over. Good guys work out, stay in shape all year long. There's no just firing down hot dogs and drinking 12ers, for 6 months and then just showing up in training camp like, time for the Junction boys to work it off. Like, no, that's not the case. Nick Bosa, I've seen Nick Bosa for the last couple of years. He doesn't even show up in the offseason. He comes back every single year. He's more chiseled. Like, he ain't just at home, screwing around. And that's most players. But the Chiefs just do Zoom only. No one's even there. And people go work out with Patrick Mahomes. Like, they got a good thing going, man. The coaches can still focus on the draft with the front office, spend a couple hours on the Zoom, and just worry about Patrick rolling in Texas with his guys. I'm telling you, I ran into Travis Kelce last week Went up, introduced myself, told him that I worked for Coach Reed. He couldn't have been any more normal. It was just a really high level, for a guy that's, on top of the world, really famous. Again, this is a small, maybe 5 to 10 minute interaction. It was just impressive. I mean, he was just down to earth, cool guy. And then I watched him because I went and hit balls. He's got a buddy that's like, a fringe pro Corn Ferry guy. They went and hit golf balls on the back of the range because that's where the pros go. And he was putting and chipping for like 3 hours. Now, again, has nothing to do with football, but you can't dispute these guys' work ethic. I mean, they got some focused cats, man. And even Travis was like, when you going back to Kansas City, because he stays out in Scottsdale for a little bit, he's like, yeah, we got OTAs. These guys love football. The Chiefs, they're going to be my pick to win it again. I'll tell you that much. I don't see, I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl, but I don't see how you don't pick them next year going into the season, assuming that everyone's healthy by the time they get to week 1. Arch Manning, who's technically not the starter right now at the University of Texas. Quinn Ewers, the guy that went to Ohio State and then transferred, is, I guess Sark said he's the starter. And obviously Arch is, high school guy, comes in early, made his spring football debut. So he's got 15 offseason practices in the spring game. He was like 5 of 13, whatever. I do think it is going to be one of the biggest stories in college football if the starter struggles at all. Arch Manning, Arch Manning, Arch Manning. I don't know in recent memory if there has been a player as famous as this coming into college, right? You become famous really fast. The Tebows, the Reggie Bushes, the Clowneys, whatever, once you're at school. And Julio and Clowney and Julio and some of these huge recruits have momentum. But Arch Manning obviously has a ton of momentum. He's the number 1 recruit. But I think he is like on a completely different level in terms of the way that we talk about quarterbacks just because of Peyton and Eli. I mean, you can't turn on, if you're just flipping channels and you go by ESPN, and listen, I like these guys. I think they're pretty entertaining, really entertaining. It's just not quite the same with the Gruden quarterback camps. They're essentially doing that with Peyton and Eli, and even Arch Manning plays a role. I watched a couple. It's just not as good. Part of what made that kind of thing so special was Gruden was just kind of crazy. I mean, that was must-see TV. You didn't even need to know that much about the quarterback in college to just be entertained by that content. And if you did, if your team was interested in the player, if you were a fan of that player, it was Gruden's quarterback camp was easily some of the best spring content ESPN did, if not the best for non-games that they had. And try to watch some of this Peyton Eli stuff. It's just not as good. Not even close to as good. It's no fault of their own. I think part of it was Gruden's just fucking nuts. And it was just very, very entertaining. And it's just not quite as good now. But Arch Manning, I don't know, man. I think Sark's on the hot seat going into this season, given that he has not had much success. They're headed to the SEC. I think at minimum he's got to win like 9 games. I can't see a 6-6, 7-5 season flying again in Texas. They're paying too much money. They have too much hype. And again, that SEC thing, I think there's tangible pressure on them. Jalen Carter is now on the betting websites is the favorite to go to Seattle. That feels pretty likely. Unless they take a quarterback, which I would not count out yet because I think they're tailor-made right now with Geno being the ideal bridge quarterback where they're still able to win. And it's different because I wouldn't say Geno is as good as Alex's career, but last season was better than anything Alex had done in terms of touchdown passes. Somewhat situation like that. You could start Geno. You could have a Patrick Mahomes. I'm not saying they're going to draft Patrick Mahomes, but my point is you can just redshirt a guy and sit him. The 49ers did that with Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo. I think they're situated, and when are they ever going to be picking 5th? We saw everyone thought they were going to suck, including myself. What happened? They went to the fucking playoffs. They won 9 games. They were really good. I mean, relative to what anyone thought they were going to be. I don't see why. Now they got draft picks. I think they're going to be competitive again. So I would imagine that it's between Jalen Carter and the quarterbacks. If they don't take a quarterback and Jalen Carter's there, they will 100% take Jalen Carter. Because Pete, historically, in college to the Seattle, push the envelope on this stuff, as they should. I mean, you take flyers. They've done it before, and they've had success. So I would expect them to do that again. Anthony Richardson, every time I look up, he's taking a different visit. I think he is he's a guy that if you told me goes to number 2 or 3, totally believe you. And if somehow he's there, like I'd have a hard time seeing him make it past Seattle. I really would. I think he goes in the top 5. I didn't think it was that crazy if you took him 1, if you really like the guy. We've seen crazier. Swing for the fences. None of these guys are guaranteed to be good. I love Bryce Young, but there's no guarantee. This is the draft. This is not Trevor Lawrence and Andrew Luck ain't walking through that door. I'm always a big believer just in life. Swing for the fences when there's not an easy route, right? There's no easy route in the draft. Nothing is guaranteed. Jalen Carter is the best player in the draft on tape. I don't even think it's really debatable. If you told me that he's out of the league in 5 years because he just can't keep his head on straight, I'd believe you. I 100% believe you because you just can't trust him. If you told me he makes Pro Bowls and gets his shit together and matures, believe you too. You talk to some people about Will Anderson, who I like. He can't really bend. I like him. I mean, I would take Will Anderson in a heartbeat, but not everyone's, a true believer. And last but not least, a lot of people push back on my take on Saquon Barkley. When I say a lot of people, I saw it on social media. Middlekauff, you got to do what's good for you. You got to take care of yourself. It's his time to get paid, which I'd agree if he was a 4th-round pick. It's like, well, 3 of his 4 years had a lot of success. He's only made $4 million, right? He's only made $5 million in his career. Last year, that was the big argument on DK, AJ, and Debo. It's like, all these guys are second-round picks. None of them have made big money. Time for them to get paid. And they all did. I Googled it because I was like, well, where'd Saquon Barkley go again in the draft? Oh, yeah. He went number 2 overall. What was he doing last year? Oh, yeah. He was playing on his 5th-year option. How much has Saquon Barkley made in his career? I wrote it down. $38.6 million. Now, again, he plays in New York, where it's expensive to buy a house and taxes are large. But if I tell you, whether you live in New York, California, or fucking Texas, I give you $38.6 million, I would call that generational changing money. So the Giants have paid a premium for Saquon Barkley. $38.6 million he has been compensated. And now with the franchise tag, if he plays on it, if he plays just on the tag, which he claims he's refusing to sign, he will have made close to $50 million in the first 6 years of his NFL career. $50 fucking million to play running back, a position that all of us agree, like, yeah, wouldn't want to pay that. He's going to make 50. He has been properly compensated. He's been paid very, very well for a guy that has had some moments and been really good and also been MIA. Like sometimes guys that are later round picks, like underpaid for sure. Saquon Barkley hasn't been underpaid. If anything, he's been overpaid. And you could make the argument he's just been properly paid. But like there are guys now holding out throughout the league for these voluntary workouts, which I've been going to OTAs for years. They've never been less important, at least on the field, right? And like I said, these are not guys doing beer bongs all off season, eating ho-hos and pizza every night. Like most of these guys come back, they look relatively normal. Now, some of the linemen, like most of us normal human beings, can, fluctuate with weight. But listen, the voluntary workout, some of these guys, there's a million names I've seen, from Josh Jacobs to Quinnen Williams to Saquon Barkley to Dexter Lawrence, that are not going to show up. And like, to me, all these guys, when it comes to involuntary, like you got to be there. Voluntary is your choice. Involuntary, mandatory is the way to say it. The mandatory OTAs. Are you going to show up? They all will, right? Deebo Samuel demanded a trade. I'm not showing up for anything. What did he do? Mandatory, he was there. Now, it was like a hold-in. He didn't actually do anything, but he was there. So all these guys, this is an easy one. The rubber meets the road come training camp. And the training camp now I wouldn't call it the irrelevancy, because I still think there's a level of, like, if I'm Saquon Barkley, you've paid me $38 million and you're prepared to pay me another $11 million. Like, I probably should show up to work, right? Quinnen Williams, that one's tough. he had a big breakout year last year. Pretty sure he was a pretty high pick too. Hasn't he made a lot of money? Like Dexter Lawrence, a little more complicated. I think 17th overall pick, right? Sees Daniel Jones get paid. In a vacuum, Dexter, he's a really, really good player. But what do you pay for a guy like that? I get it. That one probably has more validity than some, like Josh Jacobs. He helped carry the Raiders to the playoffs, obviously. He's a first-round pick, 24th overall pick, so it's not like he made Saquon money. That one gets a little complicated. But I don't view it if you don't show up for some lifting and film sessions that is that big a deal in terms of your ability to keep playing at a high level. I do think there's a level of respect for certain players that, like, is good business. And I think most teams agree that, like, when you're around, it's easier to get a deal done. We're around you every day. We can figure it out. Like, no one, for the most part, like the Ravens were never trying to screw Lamar Jackson. They offered him a lot of money. Now, when you have that mindset, and listen, I've done enough deals at this point in time in my life. When you go into a deal with a bad frame of mind, or you get to a point where you think you're getting taken advantage of, and I bet a lot of people listening to this sometimes, whatever you do for work, sometimes you're like, am I getting taken advantage of? It gets in your own head. You can start overthinking it. You start getting bitter, start getting pissed off. I understand those thoughts creeping into any player's head, any human's head. But sometimes that's where you got to take a deep breath, take a step back. Like, is this truly happening? Am I getting taken advantage of? Or are we both benefiting from this? Right? Or have they benefited at times and I benefited at times, and I've screwed them, they've screwed me, and it's relatively an even marriage here. Right? Where it gets out of whack is like, are they getting 80% of this deal and I'm only getting 20%? And I think the better and more quickly you can get to a resolution of like, no, this is actually pretty fair. It's easy to be, because it's very hard to operate. And money's all relative. Like, I can be paying you $50,000. If you think you're getting screwed, you're gonna be pissed off. I can pay you $50 million. You think you're getting screwed, you're gonna be pissed off. We're all humans. The wiring doesn't change. So when that's in your head, I get when it's in your head, you're mad. But are you correct for thinking that? And the faster you can realize that, yeah, actually, if I'm Saquon, the Giants have taken pretty good care of me, paid me a lot of money, and they're prepared to pay me even more, right? Like, I'd say it's been pretty a fruitful relationship for all parties, right? For everyone, under this contract, myself and them.